Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the show. Jonny Lipsham here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. Welcome to Sunday Night Live. It is August 4th. Good grief, we have raced through the year. It's ridiculous. This year is going so fast. It's absolutely bonkers, especially the summer holidays. It's driving me crazy, actually, how fast it's all going. But that is it. That is the way it is. The first little couple of weeks, I suppose, of the school holidays just seem to go really, really slowly. And now it's just like, okay, we are rapidly getting towards the end of the school holidays and getting the kids back to school. So, I hope everyone is okay. We've already got some people in the door, which is awesome. So I'm going to see who we have. Already we got Kyle and Thomas and Bob and Bobby Booth and Tony. Good to see you guys. See who else we have. And Michael is here. Michael Johnson is here. Awesome. So we've got a few people in the door, which is cool. Let's go and see exactly how many we have. We have 13 so far and 7 likes, which is always a good thing. I like likes. Likes are good. So it is incredibly, having cooled down a little bit, it's incredibly hot again today. So it is really hot in here, and I'm sure my poor computer, which is already having temperature problems, is suffering as well in the heat. So hopefully this machine does not decide to shut itself off, which I have heard can happen. So I'm having to kind of keep an eye on such things. Oh, banging the microphone there. And just hoping that it doesn't shut itself off when it gets too hot. The fan is spinning like a very spinny thing. But yeah, I decided this week I would not get completely and utterly obsessed with how hot my computer is. Because I know it is hot in here. As you can see, I'm wiping my brow because it is very sweaty in here. So I'm sure that that's going to be the case for the computer. But let's see, we got 13 people in here, says Michael. He says it's very thundery in Tennessee. So not sure if I'll lose connection. Well, hopefully you won't, and hopefully neither will I. I sincerely hope that that doesn't happen. Let's see. Just Bob says, glad you had a great time with your sister and her family. Yeah, it's been really nice having my sister here. I've not seen her in nearly 13 years, which was when my wife and we got married, and that was the last time she was here in Scotland. And before that, I had spent a little bit of time with her in 2006. And then before then, I hadn't seen her since I was about 14. So we don't really know each other very well, particularly. So this is a nice little opportunity for us to kind of get to know each other again after not really spending much of our lives together. But it's really, really nice to meet her two boys and to see her brother-in-law again for the first time in a long time. So they are over because we have a festival here which takes place every year. It's called the Edinburgh Festival. And part of that is something called the Fringe Festival, which is an arts kind of festival that grew out of the original main festival way back in the 1950s. And it has grown and grown and grown and grown. and now it is actually the fringe part of the festival is pretty much as big, if not bigger, than the main festival itself. So that's what's kind of happening at the moment in Edinburgh. So basically, most of the world has gathered here for about 4 weeks for this festival. So we had the jazz festival leading into it, and then we've got the main festival and the military tattoo, which goes on as well concurrently, and then it all ends in a blazing glory with a huge, massive street party and fireworks at the end of August. And then that is that. And then it goes very quiet in Edinburgh until Christmas. So there you go. That's kind of what's happening at the moment. So I have had a phenomenally busy week and a phenomenally busy day because I have been playing bass in church this morning and then in town for the rest of the day. So I am absolutely exhausted. So I may be keeping this short because it is so hot, and also I'm just done from the busy day. Michael says, didn't you say your sister lives in the USA? Yes, she does. She lives in the Chicago area, which is kind of where Jonny Guide is, which is awesome. So yeah, so that's where she lives. She's been there for 26 or so years, 26, 27 years. So yeah, so there you go. That's my little story. I'm trying to straighten my chair and move a little bit closer to the mic because I feel like I'm miles away from the mic and I'm leaning forward a lot, which I don't like. So anyway, we're about 10 minutes into the show and I've talked a lot about not very much. So I hope everyone is having a great week. And what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, I put a video out, I think it was Thursday. It might have been Friday. Yeah, I think it was actually Friday. All the days have kind of been running into each other lately. So I put a video out on sidechaining effects. So in that particular video, I used a sidechain compressor to duck a delay so that the delay is out of the way of the vocal. And then when the vocal is not performing, the repeats of the delay come back in, which actually sounds really, really cool. And it makes the vocal sound even more clear than it was before, with all the repeats of the delay. So I kind of thought that maybe we could extend this idea. Just Bob says sound is good. Well, that's good. I'm glad about that. Need to get you a fan for the room. Yeah, well, this is Scotland, and, we don't have air conditioning like you guys have in the States, because it doesn't normally get very, very hot here, but lately it has been, like up in the 90s, and that just doesn't really happen in Scotland very much. And so it is very, very hot in here. In fact, I think I'm going to go and go behind that curtain there and open a window, if you guys don't mind. And hopefully we'll not get like all the moths in Edinburgh coming in through that window. So hang on a sec. Talk amongst yourselves for a minute whilst I go and do that. And see if that helps. Right, hopefully we don't get any moths coming in here. I like moths. Moths are very beautiful creatures, but I don't like it when they just start kicking around, and then they'll get in my face, and I don't really want that. Here we go. Kyle says global warming is a myth. Yes, if only it was. Apparently, July has been the hottest month on planet Earth ever. It's been the hottest July in history. This July. And so there you go. We have had all sorts of major flooding incidences taking place down in England. They've had a dam burst its banks because there's been a whole lot of rainfall down in England, and it's been not very nice down there. In a part of England called Derbyshire, they've had just a lot of problems, and there's been loss of life and all sorts of things going on there. Anyway, I don't think my computer's coping very well because it's like 85 degrees. That can't be good. That cannot be good. So yeah, so I thought we could take a look at some extensions to sidechaining. If we go into Studio One, and we can just... There are thousands of things you can do with sidechaining. It's ridiculous. I mean, those of you that do EDM will know all about sidechaining and what you can and what you can't do. And especially now with the new reverse sidechain capability in Studio One, this is just so cool. And how easy it is to set it up. It's ridiculous. So, let me think here. So we've sidechained a delay. You guys can't see what I'm talking about. Hang on a sec. Because you need to see that. Greg says, as long as it doesn't rain while the Aussies are winning the cricket. Yeah, I'd actually really like it to rain in Birmingham tomorrow, and the weather forecast is for rain. So England might just get away with a draw down there in Birmingham. There you go. Not many of you will be interested in that because you won't be interested in cricket. So now you're looking at my screen. You can see this is what I did in the video. I set up a sidechain compressor on the delay, and it gets the delay out of the way of the vocal really quite nicely. But how about we actually get everything out of the way of the vocal? So we duck all the music, everything else out the way of the lead vocal, even the background vocals. Why not? So let's create a bus. So we're going to hold shift and click the last one. Let's create a new bus. And we'll call this, I don't know, we'll call this band bus. I'm not going to change the color of it just now. But I'm thinking what we should do is put our compressor, put another compressor onto the lead vocal here. No, we don't want to put it there at all, do we? We do not want to put it there at all. Hang on, what's going on here? I want to get rid of this guy. Go away. Because we want to duck everything else. So we want to go over to this guy. We want to put it over here, don't we? So let's put this here. Let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. I'm not worried about makeup gain. We'll keep it at 2:1. We'll pull this back just a wee bit, and we'll see what happens with that. And then what we'll do is we'll just open this again, and we will have the lead vocal as the target. And the lead vocal is going to trigger this compressor, and this compressor is going to duck everything. That's what I'm hoping will happen. So let's find a spot where the vocal comes in and see what happens. So let's back it up to about there.
Another grace flashes past the window on the 13th floor. One more sad life crashes, broken by the yearn for more and more. Another spin of the wheel, roll of the dice, or ace on the turn.
As you can see here, it pumps just a little bit, but I think you get the idea. What you would need to do, now that you've got it actually compressing a little bit, and it's compressing about 5 dB, what you would want to do is then play with the attack and the release until you get it sounding how you want, so that the ducking doesn't sound quite so obvious. At the moment, it sounds really quite obvious, and it's pumping quite badly. So you wouldn't want that. So you would probably want to maybe give it a bit of a faster attack, and maybe a slower release, maybe. Let's try, maybe not such a slow release. Maybe a little bit of a faster release. Let's try that.
Another grace flashes past the window on the 13th floor. One more sad life crashes, broken by the yearn for more and more. Another spin of the wheel, roll off the dice, or a Sunday turn. You beg, borrow, or steal, or trade your soul for bands to burn.
So I think you get the idea there. You play around with the attack and the release until you get it so that the vocal just always sits on top. And this is a cool little technique. You can do this with, with anything that you want to kind of get into a better balance. So, for example, you might do this with the kick drum and the bass guitar. So every time the kick drum hits, the bass guitar ducks, or the other way around, whichever of the kick drum or the bass you want to be in front. You can certainly apply this technique, and it'll definitely help with the overall balance of your mix. But this idea of always wanting the vocal to be on top, regardless of what's going on in the song, to make sure that every syllable is really clear. You could do this with automation, but certainly using a sidechain compressor to duck everything else apart from the vocal would work for you. So it's definitely worth trying out. So as I say, there are hundreds of different things that you can do with sidechain compression that really the sky's the limit as to what you can do. But I thought, since I'd done my video and I'd shown you how to sidechain a vocal to a delay, so that you're ducking the delay out of the way of the vocal and then allowing the repeats to come back in when the vocal's not performing, I thought, hey, why not just kind of look at another way in which you can use sidechain compression. It is such a cool little tool. And being that I work in jazz music and folk music and acoustic music, I don't really use it that much. But when I'm working on something like a track like this one, this is a really smart little technique. I'm obviously overcooking it here so that you can really hear it, but I'd obviously spend a little bit more time dialing in the attack and the release until I've got it so that basically the band is just ducking a couple of dB below the vocal, rather than being really, really obvious. But there you go. I hope that helps, guys. And I guess what we'll do now is we'll turn everything over to your questions. So I'm going to minimize that out of the way. Oh, good grief. I just looked at my temperature gauges. I wish I hadn't. All right, so there we go, folks. I hope that helps, and we'll get on to your questions now. Just give me 1 second. Oh, we have a moth. We have a moth. Did you guys see that? That moth just landed right on my... Oh, man. He landed right on my belly, and then he landed on the mixer. So you guys are going to see that guy flying around, and I'm going to have to try and catch him and let him go later on. So there you go, folks. I hope that was helpful for you. So let's get over to your questions. So second Tony says, so I could sidechain a flute the same way? Yes, you absolutely could. So if you are... Oh, I got some donations and I didn't realize. Sorry, guys. Let me go and have a look at those first. So Thomas has sent me 250 PHP. I'm not quite sure what PHP is. That Filipino currency? Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. That is very generous. And David says, call this a first step into Buy Jonny New Computer Fund. Thank you so much, David, for the $20. I really appreciate that, guys. It's very, very kind of you. Yeah, I'm not sure I need a new computer. I think basically it probably is a combination of how hot it is at the moment and the fact that it probably just needs a darn good clean out. I think it's a case of it's just got very very dusty. Very dusty on the inside. And I think it's about time that it got a clean out. So I think that's essentially what's going on here. Okay, let's get to Tony's questions. So I could sidechain a flute the same way. Yes, you absolutely could. It's on the white cabinet now, says Bob. Yeah. What, behind me here? Yeah. Oh yeah, I can see it. Yes, you absolutely could. And in fact, I've done this with horn arranging when I've got things like trumpets and saxes and trombones and those kind of things. Anything that is, like, just generally speaking, louder than a flute. Oh, there it goes past my head. The flute can easily get buried by something that's just got a bigger sound like a saxophone. So there are different things you can do. Number one, you can do it with arranging techniques to make sure the flute is always nice and clear and on top. So you would, you would voice your chords so that the flute is always on the top. Or you can do it with side chaining so that the flute is just a little bit above everything else. You can do it with EQ as well. So you can roll off some of the highs in the EQ for your horn section. And then you can boost some of the highs in the flute so that... Oh, it's rattling around. I knew opening that window would do something like that. That was a bad idea. So, yes, you can definitely do that. That's a great question, though. It's going absolutely mad around the lights, which is what moths do. It's just above me here. You can't see it. It's out of shot. But yeah, it's going absolutely crazy. So yeah, you can absolutely do that. Kyle says most people can hear a 3 dB change in level. Yeah, definitely. So you want to make sure that when you are sidechaining and you're using it to duck something like that, to tuck something underneath something else, then yes, you want to make sure that it's less than 3 dB, probably about 2.5 dB, so that it is not obvious, but it has the effect that you want. I think is I think that's a good suggestion there. All right, any other question? Oh, Thomas confirms it's Filipino peso. Thank you very much. You live in the Philippines. Oh, I bet the Philippines are gorgeous at this time of the year. I hope it's not too hot for you out there. So let's see. Oh, awesome. I've just seen the currency conversion there. So that's cool. Yeah, any other questions? Otherwise, this is going to be a real short show. It's only 25 minutes past the hour, so Jonny normally goes for, hey, half past the hour, we'll take questions. So I'm maybe a little bit early. That was a little bit of a rough and ready demo, but I was aware that everything is just very, very hot in here. Just Bob says, so is the idea to raise instrument 1 dB and lower the rest of the music by 1 dB? Raise. Kind of. You're not raising anything, but you are making space for. So, for example, what I was doing there was I was using the compressor to turn down everything else whilst the vocal maintained its own original level. So it was like literally as if I had just gone in and written automation on an automation lane that had all the tracks routed to it. So if I had that bus and then I automated the volume level on that bus, that's something that you might come up with. Every little phrase you're ducking, you're literally drawing in, or you're riding it with your fader. Every time the vocal comes in, you're ducking, you're turning it down, and then you're turning it back up when the vocal stops, and those kind of things. So you're not, when you do sidechaining, you're not necessarily raising the volume of anything. You're changing the perceived volume, perhaps, but you are turning everything else down relative to where that particular instrument or voice is in its original level, which is what we did here. Enice43 says, hey Jonny, good to see you, my friend. Welcome to the show. We're about coming up on way through, we have a special guest in the studio with this beautiful hawk moth. I don't know where he is now, but pretty much guaranteed. I opened the window up earlier in the show because I thought it's so hot in here. I need to do something about that. So this little moth flew in through the window, and I thought that it wouldn't do that, but it has. So I'm gonna maybe let him sleep in here overnight, and then I'll let him go in the morning. I think that's gonna be the easiest way. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad, Just Bob. I'm glad that makes sense and helps you. Any more questions, guys? Because it is 1:30. So that's that with the ducking of the main. Well, it's not really the main bus. It's kind of, I routed everything to a separate bus to do this. So any other questions? And it doesn't have to be about sidechaining unless you really do have questions about sidechaining. In which case I can do it a little bit more. But yeah, there are thousands of things that you can do with sidechaining. You can sidechain. I don't know. You could if you've got an acoustic song, for example, and you've got a really rhythmic and percussive acoustic guitar part, and it's just acoustic guitar and vocal, you could use a sidechain so that every time the singer is singing, the guitar is turned down by a couple of dB, so that the guitar always stays on top of that. That gets done quite a lot. Even in folk music, that gets done quite a bit. So yeah, so I hope that helps. Carl says, do windows there not have screens to keep the critters out? No, they don't. Mostly because it never really gets hot enough that you need to do that here. I'm going to close Studio One unless you guys have any burning Studio One questions. I mean, I can always open this up again after. Yeah, no, we don't no screens in Windows in Scotland. No, generally not, because it, generally speaking, up here doesn't get that hot. Even in the summer, it's only like 70s Fahrenheit at the hottest. Although I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, I think a brand new temperature record was set here in Edinburgh when it got up to 36.2 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's freaking hot. And it was extremely hot for here. It was so hot for here, actually, that parts of the road actually started to melt. That's how hot it was here. But we haven't had heat like that for a while. So this July has been extraordinarily hot. And down in England, they broke the UK-wide temperature record. Enai says, how are those compressors that you pay for by Presonus? Oh, do you mean the fat channel compressors? The fat channel add-ons, the EQs and the compressors, they are fantastic. They are really, really good. I went and just got the whole lot. I got all the EQs and all the compressors. It's about $400 or something like that worth of add-ons. And I use them a lot. Particularly I use the FET and the tube compressors. But I do make use of some of the other ones as well that are there, and I love the Pultec style EQ. I love also if you have a Presonus interface, like one of the, well, any Presonus interface or mixer, you should have also been able to get the Studio Magic bundle, and amongst those is the Mag EQ2 from Plugin Alliance. I have that, and I use that a lot as well because it's got the world famous Airband on there, which just gives a lot of air, a lot of upper range sparkle to vocals and trumpets and things like that. Things that you want to kind of like be nice and crisp and clear up top without being shrill and harsh. Well, the Mag EQ does that for you. And you also get the Brainworks Opto Compressor, which is fantastic. It was on that song that you saw there as well, on the lead vocal. So all of those are really, really cool. Tony says, I'm working on a folk song, making solo part in MIDI, so I'll use the sidechain a lot. Cool. Enai says, how are they different from the stock ones? Well, they're different in that the fat channel EQs and compressors, they are modeled after the original hardware. So the hardware compressors, the hardware EQs, that they are kind of named after. They're not specifically named after. They don't use the actual product names because, well, they could get sued if they did that. So they have to kind of manufacture a way of saying it. So, like, for example, the Alpine compressor, I think it is, that's not its real name. But it's close to what the actual name of that product is. So they are modeled after hardware EQs and compressors, whereas the stock ones that you get, the compressor and the Pro EQ, they're just really transparent. For example, the stock compressor, all it does is just turn the volume down. It doesn't add any harmonic distortion, doesn't add any saturation, doesn't add any tube coloring or anything like that. Doesn't do that. It just literally turns things up, turn things down. The same with the Pro EQ. The Pro EQ basically just adjusts your frequency curve. It doesn't add any coloration. So that's really the big difference between the stock and any kind of EQs and compressors that are emulating analog gear, analog hardware compressors and EQs. So I hope that helps. Kyle says, have a great day, night. I'm gone. Okay, Kyle, take care. Have a good week. I'll catch you on Wednesday, hopefully, on Songwriting Simplified. Jonny says, let's have Jonny going on for a few more hours to see if he breaks. Oh, it is unbearably hot in here at the moment. My computer has cooled down a bit, but it is still really, really hot. How much color in them? Well, as I say, they're modeled after actual hardware gear that have actual, resistors and capacitors and tubes and those kind of things. So, what's the difference between a Pultec EQ and an Eve EQ? Well, the similarity is that they turn up and down frequencies. You can boost frequencies, you can cut frequencies. The difference between an Eve EQ and a Pultec EQ, other than the Pultec EQ only basically has two bands. It has a high band and a low band. The other major difference is how they sound. They sound very different because they are different pieces of hardware. With different circuitry, different capacitors, different everything on the inside, that makes them distinct and unique. I mean, it's the same between an SSL console and a Focusrite console, or a TG12345 console. They're all really different sounding, even though they have the same kind of things involved. They have faders, they have pan controls, they have an EQ section and a compressor section, or some of them have, and they have various routing options. But essentially, they do the same thing, but they sound very different because they're very differently built. So, they have different colors and different tonalities compared to anything that is native inside Studio One. Because the EQs and the Pro EQ and the compressor and the channel strip in Studio One are not designed to color anything. They're just designed to just boost and cut in terms of EQ and compress in terms of the compressor or the compressor knob in the channel strip. So there's quite a distinctive difference. The FET compressor in the fat channel and the tube compressor, they are directly modeled on actual hardware 1176 and LA2A units. So that's how those work. Just Bob says, had lunch with my niece nephew from California today, both in college, and one is studying in Japan this semester. Wow, that's awesome. That's fantastic. That your relatives are getting to travel the world and go and see different parts of the world. That's really, really cool. I like that. I have seen various parts of the world. I've not been. There are vast parts of the world I've not been to, like Asia. I've never been to the continent of Asia at all. I've traveled extensively throughout Europe, and I've been to America and Canada. But I have never been to Australia, New Zealand, and places like that. I would love to, but I haven't yet. So that is very, very cool. Let's see. David SJ says, apparently I'm invisible today. Really? Did you ask a question, my friend, and I missed it? I apologize. Good to see you, my friend, and I'm glad that you are here. Let me go see. Did you actually ask something and I missed it? Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. David says, I destroyed the hi-hats in my latest Reaper contest mix. Any tips as to high-passing the overheads to cut the drum bleed while still letting the hats come through unmolested? Oh, that's a tricky one. I'm assuming that the hi-hats are directly mic'd. And if they are, then you might want to consider using that mic for your hi-hats more than the overhead. Now, obviously, they're going to get into the overheads anyway. So it depends how you want to treat the overheads. That's the first thing you want to ask yourself. How do I want to treat the overheads? Are the overheads my overall sound of the drums as a whole? Or are they just cymbal mics? So that's something you need to think about. I destroyed my hi-hats in my latest Reaper contest mix. So yes, so think about how you're going to use the overheads. If you're using the overheads just to pick up the cymbals and the hi-hats, then you would probably want to high-pass the overheads up quite high until the drums are gone, fundamentally. Certainly get the kick drum out of there and get the get the toms and the snare drum out of there as much as you can, so that all you're left with is the highs for the cymbal. The problem with that is you're going to lose the body of the cymbals, because where the body of a crash cymbal lives is very similar to where the snare drum lives in its frequency response. So there's a lot of overlap there. So that's going to be your problem. Your other option is to sample replace using your trashed hi-hat mic to trigger a sample of a hi-hat. That might work. So that you then blend that hi-hat sample in so that it takes over the role of the hi-hat mic. The thing with that is you're not going to be able to get that hi-hat sound into your overheads. So there are things that you need to kind of weigh up. What you are prepared to lose, what you are prepared to sacrifice in terms of your overall drum sound to make that whole thing work. So I hope that helps, David. Let's see. Let's go all the way back down again. Ken is here. Ken is one of my mods here. as is Peace Valley Audio. That is my good friend Mike Neighbor, who's just said greetings from Kentucky, because I think he's on vacation, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Ken says, hi all, late tonight, just got home from a gig. Well, I hope your gig went well. David says, no, the hats were only in the overheads. Okay. The snare and toms were bleeding in quite a lot. No direct hat mic. Snare and toms bleeding into what? The overheads? Again, that kind of depends upon two things: the style of the music and what your objective for capture with the overheads is. Are you intending to capture the entire drum sound or just the cymbals? Yes, lots of fun, says Ken. Cool. And Mike confirms that he is on vacation. And he says, just popping in real quick. Well, I'm glad you're here, mate. And you missed my little very, very quick demo of sidechaining your entire band to your vocal so that the vocal always stays on top of the mix. Which kind of went well. It is extremely hot here, Mike, here in Scotland. And to the point where my poor little computer is struggling to run Studio One and OBS because it's overheating. And at that point, the computer was like up into like the late 80s degrees centigrade, Celsius rather. Okay, I'm trying to follow David's comments here. Yes, the overheads. Okay, David, are you using the overheads to capture the entire drum sound, or are you aiming for the overheads just to capture just the cymbals? In which case, if it's just the cymbals, you can high pass everything else out. So you can just slap an EQ on there, roll that high pass filter up until pretty much most of the drums are gone. But as I say, you'll end up with really thin sounding cymbals. And you might need to sample and replace your hi-hat. Possibly. Toby is here, and he says, did you look at those free programs I linked you? They stop your computer doing things it shouldn't in the background. They work a treat. Usually shuts the cooling fan up straight after the scans. Yeah, I think I forgot in the last show to save those links. I'll maybe go back in the chat for last week's show and see if I can find those. That might be really, really helpful. John Lake says, I have an old song that's been on 3 albums in Europe. I should get money for that. I am in the USA. Yes, you should, if you have them registered with BMI. And ASAP, ASCAP. You should get royalties for that. Yeah, absolutely you should. Sheila is here, and she says, I just wanted to say hi. I'm waiting on my sister's return from Canada. Sheila, really good to see you, and thank you for dropping by. I really appreciate it. Let's see. I can still hear that moth flapping about. Where is he? He's around in here somewhere. David says, I'm not sure how they were recorded, but the cymbals and hats were only in the overheads. Okay. I tried to high pass the drum bleed out, but the hats came out like a sizzling steak. No other options for the hi-hats. Oh dear. Not sure how they recorded, but the cymbals and hats were only in the overheads. Right. Okay. So it sounds like there was no direct mic for the hi-hats, and I think you had said that already. So the overheads were capturing the cymbals, but you also get the drums in there as well. Yeah, maybe high passing is not the way to go if you're getting just really, really very, very sizzly hi-hats. maybe that's not a good approach. Maybe what you might want to do is treat the overheads as capturing the whole drum set, instead of just trying to make it just capture the cymbals, and not worry about the drum bleed. To be honest, when I'm recording drums, that's how I do it. I have my overheads, and they are measured out so that they are in phase with the snare, but they are looking over the whole drum set. So they're not just capturing the cymbals, they're capturing the whole drum set from above. And then I've got my direct mics on individual instruments within the drum set, and then I'll have a couple of stereo room mics, and then out in the hallway I'll have a mono trash mic. And that guy I compress the living snot out of, and then my room mics I'll compress quite heavily as well and blend those in. But I'm using the overheads to capture the whole overall drum sound, and then I will blend the spot mics, the individual instrument mics, in with the overheads. So really the overheads for me are what gets me my drum sound, and then the individual mics I blend in. If you follow that. That's kind of how I do it. But again, it depends upon the style of music that you're working with. If it's, if it's heavy rock or something, then I would imagine that the opposite would be true. That the majority of your drum sound would be captured by the spot mics, with the overheads blended in to taste with those. So you get a much closer, much more separated drum sound than you would otherwise. But to be honest, I never worry about bleed. I just don't. It's part of the nature of recording something with multi-mics. I don't worry about it, because it's part of the sound. The same is true when I multi-mic a saxophone. Believe it or not, I often multi-mic a saxophone. So I'll have maybe a large capsule condenser mic and a dynamic mic, and I'll have them in phase with each other, so they're right next to each other in front of the sax, and I'm using the tonality of both microphones to get my saxophone sound. That's what I did on the sax for Paper Deity, the song that we were using earlier. That's multi-mic'd. That's a Rode NT1A and an SM57 parked right next door to each other, and then I blend those two microphones together to create that sound. So I hope that helps, David. Yes, he says, I guess I should have left the bleed in. Yeah, yeah. I really don't worry about bleed, and I don't know what the style of music that you're working with, David, is for this mix, but it might well be worth trying that. Just kind of going, screw it, let's just use the overheads to shape the whole drum sound, and then we'll blend in the spot mics. Especially if there's no direct hi-hat mic, which I find a little odd. But again, if you're not recording rock music, you may not have a spot mic for the hi-hats. If it's something a little bit more acoustic orientated, then or jazz orientated, then yeah, you're probably not going to have a spot mic for the hi-hats. I don't tend to when I record my stuff. My stuff is minimal mic'd as much as I can get away with. Usually a couple of overheads and a kick drum mic. If I can get away with that, that's what I do. So yeah, maybe kind of give those a try. Sheila says, staying cool tip, put 2 damp towels in the freezer for 5 to 10 minutes, and then put them on the back of your neck to keep your body temperature down. Repeat as needed. That's very cool. Thank you for that, Sheila. Like I said, we don't really have spectacularly hot summers, but we have had the last maybe 2 summers they've been really quite hot. Cool. Let's see. Just Bob says, don't go crazy trying to muffle the moss. Wing flap with acoustic panels. That's very cool. Let's see. Mika is here. Hello, Mika. Says, just got in, had to shelter in place at a guitar center because of possible gunman in the mall. Oh my goodness. And Hollandale. Sorry, Hollandale. My goodness, what a weekend. Yeah, you're not kidding. Wow. That must have been pretty scary. We don't really have those kind of things happening here in the UK, to be honest. So, I can't imagine what that's like. I can't. I mean, I see these kind of things on the news with alarming regularity, but I really don't know what it's like to go through that and to live with those kind of things going on all the time. But it must be pretty terrifying. David says, it was a heavy rock song with a busy pattern. I just felt the drum bleeds in the overhead was overwhelming the cymbals and hi-hats. Thanks for the tip. I'll change my approach. Okay, that's cool, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, it may well be that the way they were captured was with the overheads being fairly close up to the drums. It's possible. It's possible the overheads were too close or they were recorded too hot. That's another possibility. If the balance of it is that the cymbals are too loud in the overheads or the drums are too loud compared to the cymbals, it could well be that the overheads were just not necessarily well placed during recording. And maybe instead of kind of like being over the whole drum set, they were maybe kind of positioned looking towards the drummer rather than over the drummer and looking down on the snare drum, which is where I would normally put them. So they are looking down towards the center of the snare drum, but because they are large cap condenser mics, they are capturing the whole drum sound. If they're too low or they're improperly angled away from the cymbals and pointing towards me, the drummer, then they're going to capture more of the drums than they are the cymbals, because, the sides of a condenser mic don't necessarily capture as well as the direct front. It depends on the polar pattern of the mic as well. So, or it may well be that they used small capsule condenser mics. That's another thing that you might encounter there. But yeah, I would say give that a try. Sheila says, I'm ready to move to Europe. Yeah, I totally understand that, but I would wait until Brexit does or does not happen first. Because that is going to be chaos. Greg is here, and he says, I'm about to record my first vocal track today to a song I've been writing. Any tips? Yes. I would say, when you're recording your vocal, set yourself up so that your mic is in the center of your room and that your room is well treated. If you're in the center of the room, kind of like the same distance away from either side walls or front and back walls, then you're going to minimize at least some of the reflections in the room. That's the first thing. Second thing, don't get too close up to the mic, because then you'll get proximity effect. I'm sitting here in front of my mic, and I've got this pop shield here, which is about maybe a couple of inches away from the front of the mic, and then I'm another 2-3 inches away from that, so it's probably about 5 or 6 inches. Now, if I was recording a vocal, if I was singing, that would be way too close. And proximity effect would kick in, which means it's just going to be terribly boomy. Terribly, terribly boomy, and you'll find yourself doing a massive nick in your EQ to cut out all of that low mids. So back yourself off to about here, maybe, from the mic. And then if you're singing a louder note, you can move your head back further still. And then when you're singing nice and quiet, in a particularly quiet section of your song, you can get right up close and personal to the microphone like this. Now that will give you some low end, but when you're singing quietly, you maybe want that low end to carry the voice a bit more than when you normally are singing. And if you're shouting really loud, which I can't do because my kids are asleep and I don't want to wake the house, but so set yourself up so you're not too close and you're not too far away from the mic. So place the mic in the correct place in your room. Set yourself up so you're not too close, not too far away. About 9 to 18 inches away from the mic, I would suggest, is your kind of range. So 9 inches away when you're singing quietly. And then 18 inches away when you're really belting it. Maybe even further away when you're belting it as well. Do those. Next thing to think about is do not record a hot signal into your interface. You do not need to. So watch the input level meter on your interface if it has one. If it doesn't have one, use the input meters in Studio One. Just open up the input section of the mixer in Studio One and you should be able to see your input. Watch that input signal. And it really shouldn't be peaking. I'm talking peaking, not average level. I'm talking peaking. It shouldn't really be peaking much more than about minus 12, maybe minus 10 tops. So your loudest notes should be maybe about minus 10, I would suggest. The reason why I say that is not because, hey, we have no noise floor anymore, which we don't in the digital domain. We don't have a noise floor. The reason why back in the day you would record as hot a signal as you possibly could without clipping is because in the analog world, you had a noise floor to contend with. So you would want the direct signal, the voice, to be louder than the noise underneath it. So you'd capture as clean a sound as you could. In the digital domain with 21st century interfaces, there is no noise floor, practically. I mean, the noise floor, I think, is about minus 144 dB, I think it is. So you don't need to worry about the noise floor in the digital domain. So what you would do is record a nice conservative level, because when you are ready to gain stage and you're ready to mix, if you have a loud signal, you can end up if you're recording a loud signal with not much headroom. Hey, let's say you just really let loose on a take and you clip. Well, that take, however good it sounds, however well performed it was, if it's clipped, you've wrecked the take. You're going to have to do it again. Whereas if you have that 12 dB headroom, you've got room to play with how much volume you get and how much you go for it on a particular take. And you're not having to think about, oh, I'm getting close to clipping here. You never have to play that dance. So, allow yourself that headroom by recording at a nice conservative low level, because you can always turn it up. If you've clipped, nothing you can do about it. So those would be my tips with recording vocals. Malwarebytes, Spybot, hijack this, crap cleaner for those interested. Oh, right. Okay, cool. Malwarebytes I do have already. I already have software that deals with spy bots and that kind of stuff, and I have CCleaner as well, and I have Avast. But those are very cool. Thank you for that. Just Bob says to Greg, also a low volume in headphones so you don't push your voice. Great point. That is very, very cool. David says the digital noise floor is minus 44 dB, minus 144 dB, but the mic will be a little higher, but not usually above minus 100. The NT1A has a noise floor of minus 112. Yes, basically, it's stupid low. It's not even worth worrying about, frankly, in my opinion. Deer Creek says your mic and hardware will have a noise floor you can hear, question mark, not to mention room ambient noise. That said, just record outside and close mic. Yes, there is a noise floor in the digital domain, but it is so low it's negligible. Being that it's minus 144 dB. And yes, room ambience. So make sure your room is reasonably acoustically treated so you're not getting reflections off the wall. And, if your room is particularly lively, you can always put up some blankets or build a little makeshift vocal booth out of some mattresses, something like that. Just get a couple of mattresses and make a little V shape. And then set that up in front of your mic so that you're singing into that V shape and then it's not going to get into the room. That's another thing you can do. You can improvise those kind of things. There we go. Tony says, I used to have my mouth 90 degrees from the mic. Yeah, that's another good point, actually. If you generate, personally, because of the shape of your mouth or your jaw or your position of your teeth, you generate a lot of sibilants or a lot of plosives. A good pop shield is a good option, but also you can sing cross mic. I have had artists do that, where they don't sing directly into the face of the mic. The mic is at an angle, so they're singing across the mic. That can certainly help with reducing stuff like that. Mika says, create a headphone mix that will enhance the singer's performance. Absolutely. Reduce the non-metallic elements that can be a distraction in the headphone mix to a strong performance. Yep, that's a great idea as well. So you have a whole bunch of great suggestions there for that. I'm going to scroll up a little bit more. Let's see. Mika says, thanks, I heard no gunshots. Don't think there were any, just some fool marching around with an AK-47. Oh, good grief. Who goes to get an ice cream cone with an AK-47? Ah, dear, what is the world coming to? The world has gone mad, I tell you. Chris at Deer Creek says, even though your door may have a noise floor you don't worry about, crank a Bayer M160 or an EV RE20 with a cheap mic pre, the ocean sounds will come rushing in. Yes, that's very true. If you've got a very cheap interface, then yes. One of those kind of mics, yes, you're going to get the old shh going on. Absolutely. Okay. We are at 5 minutes past 1. So I am going to call it a night here. And as I say, we are battling a number of things here, including a moth, Chris. I don't know if you're aware that we have had a moth in the room here. I don't know where it's gone now. But it certainly was in here. I was hoping it didn't land in my cup of tea, but let's see. Yes, there's some great suggestions there from Dave about mic placement to enhance different aspects of your voice. Absolutely. All right, folks. Yes, I'm going to call it a night there. I'm not going to play any outro music, so... Oh, all right then. I will play some outro music. But I just want to finish off by saying a big thank you to everybody who has been in here tonight. Thank you to those that have donated via Super Chat. I always appreciate Super Chat donations. They are exceedingly helpful, and they help me keep making videos, and they help me keep the live streams going on Sundays, and they help in a whole bunch of other ways as well, like getting things like lighting. The lighting I have in here now is because of you guys helping me out, because my old live streams, if you go back to my live streams from 2017, yeah, the lighting sucked. I didn't really think about such things back then, but you guys have helped me out by being able to purchase some lights, and of course the webcam as well. So you guys help out a great deal, and I appreciate every single one of you for being here tonight and being here every week. Some of you are here every week without fail. I'm not going to mention any names, but I know that there are some of you here that have been to every Sunday Night Live since I started them in 2017. That is pretty awesome. That's like 2 years worth of Sunday Night Lives. I really appreciate those of you that are brand new to the show and those of you that have been doing these shows for a couple of years with me. So thanks ever so much, everybody, and I'm going to bid you all a very good night. Good night. Where's my music? Good night, everybody. And Greg, let it rain.